Hello, everybody. I'm really excited to be here today. I'm Andrea Chang. I'm a technology reporter at the Los Angeles Times. Like I said, I love covering wearables. I think of all the different topics that I write about, this is one of the most exciting. It is something that, I find consumers feel very passionately about. They either love this idea, or they're skeptical about it, or there's just like outright disdain for the idea of wearables. So it's fun to cover. I'm really excited. We've got a great panel. Why don't we just go down the line? You guys introduce yourselves, tell us what company you're from, and a little bit about what you guys do in the wearable tech space.
Hi. Hi, my name is Andrea Chang. I'm the Director of New Ventures and New Products with Epson. And I always like to tell everyone I have the best job at Epson because I get to play with all sorts of cool tech toys. From smart glasses like the Epson Moverio to our soon-to-be launched Epson PulseSense continuous heart rate monitor, as well as for those of you out in the audience who are into golfing, we're going to be launching a golf swing analyzer. So, really at an exciting time for Epson, because I know a lot of you are going like, what the heck is a printer company doing in smart wearables? And I'd love to just have the opportunity to share with you at this event as to why, and I think you're going to see some pretty exciting stuff in the future from Epson.
I'm Ben. I work at Indiegogo, and I'm our community manager for hardware design and technology. And so we're often, I think, one of the first places that a wearable encounters the public through crowdfunding when someone's trying to bring that product to life. And my role is to both help people who are going through that process and figure out how to fund effectively, how to reach their audience, and how to reach market, but also to figure out how Indiegogo can best support the emerging hardware ecosystem. We're not completely focused on wearables, but it's a huge part of what we do. We see a lot of them coming through, with even Muse, who's in the back right now, funded on Indiegogo, and they do brain sensing hardware. So a lot of fascinating stuff that we see, and excited to learn more tonight.
Good evening. My name is Dayveon Ross, and I'm one of the co-founders of ShotTracker. We build a wearable tech that automatically tracks your basketball shot attempts, makes, misses, and location on the court. And in real time, we plot a shooting chart for a basketball player.
Hi, everybody. I'm Todd Harple. I work for Intel Corporation. I'm in our new devices group. And within that, I'm in our smart device innovation part of the group, which is really our pathfinding. So it's really the tip of the spear at Intel, working on things that are really new and exciting. And I'm a trained social scientist. I'm an anthropologist by training. First 4 years at Intel I spent living in people's houses around the globe. Lots of stories there. But right now my job is really at that intersection between business, people, and technology. And understanding the timing to make things right, to make things like wearables or consumer IoT things, finding out that right balance. Because at Intel, of course, we're a technology company, but we do have a very strong competency in social science and design that we like to balance that with. And so I sit at that intersection on a front-end pathfinding for the new devices group.
Perfect. So I wanted to start off with sort of a general question for you guys, and that's if you could talk about why the need for wearables. And I think there's still some people, obviously in this crowd it's not the case, but some people have yet to even get a smartphone, and they're like, well, tell me why it's even necessary to have a wearable. What's sort of your pitch?
Okay, well, as a hardware company, I think I'll go ahead and get started. A lot of folks ask, why smart glasses? And a lot of folks are kind of concerned about what are the use cases, what are the applications, the privacy issues. Here at Epson, we've really focused more on the industrial commercial applications. It actually, with the smart glasses, we actually focus more on augmented reality applications, information that assists from forklift operators to surgeons to what we call augmented reality remote training and support. So there's a lot of very practical use cases for smart glasses in the industrial commercial space. And I think in the consumer space, all of us are really fascinated about our health. I know before we started the PulseSense product line, I was like, who wants to quantify themselves? Now that I'm in it, I'm kind of mesmerized by my sleep data, I have to confess. Every morning I wake up and I'm like, how did I sleep? What was my heart rate during my sleep? So I think there's a lot of elements that attract, folks into smart wearables.
I guess two points for me. One is just access to data and the ability to gather data that you just can't get from a smartphone. I think health is the perfect example of maybe I want my pulse and I don't want to hold my smartphone to my wrist all day. And I would say beyond that, I think and the thing that I'm maybe most excited about is the service packages that can be built on top of that make my world more like magic. The smartphone is still a very visible, very interactive technology, and I am excited about the world where technology fades away and I can live my life seemingly separate from technology because I walk to my door, it's automatically unlocked, I go to my house, my lights turn on, my kitchen cooks me my food, where I don't have to heavily interact with the device to get that same service or information.
So for us in the basketball sports world, we love wearables, and when we think about ShotTracker, so for instance, I played basketball in college, and during the summers I would shoot anywhere from 1,000 jump shots a day as part of my workout. One of the things that I didn't do as part of that was document my workouts. Why? Because I was already in the gym for 2 hours. I didn't want to spend an extra hour, charting my shots, charting what I was doing. And at ShotTracker, we have a saying, you can't improve what you don't measure. So for us, it's really important to be able to, know where your perfect shot is. Know how you're doing, know how you're improving on a daily basis. And we think that, wearables, and specifically our solution, and the reason we came up with this concept is because it provides a certain level of accountability, and it provides a certain level of transparent audit tracking that you traditionally wouldn't have. So as we go through the process, we try to really focus on making it invisible and transparent to the end user so they can go about their daily lives. And that's the exciting thing for us as it relates to wearables.
Sure.
I think I look at it from two different perspectives. One is kind of the human perspective. I mean, we have worn things, arguably technologies, for thousands of years, different sorts of technologies. I mean, I'm somebody who lived in New Guinea for a couple of years doing field work, and people there are wearing penis cords, believe it or not, as technology to store things, to keep things dry. Yeah, it's kind of funny, but we move forward, hundreds of years, and we see people using pocket watches, one of the first sort of mobile technologies to keep trains on time. You start keeping trains on time, then you start being able to deliver things on time. You can set up expectations. Ultimately, there are things that people value, and wearable technologies are supporting different things that people value. They might value utility. It might be a statement about who I am. I know in some places we've done some work in China, for instance, where people love to wear that, the Longines watch, look at me, I'm successful, and it goes the same with some of the technologies that people might put on their wrists. It says, I'm tech forward. I choose not to look that way, that's not me, but for a lot of people that's a value. It's the statement about themselves, and this is above and beyond, the utility you're getting out of it in an enterprise sense, the utility you're getting out of it in a physiological sense or a physics sense of what were my movements, what did I do? And then the other thing of why wearables are emerging now is related to one of the founders of our company, Gordon Moore. You've all probably heard of Moore's Law, right? So Moore's Law is this notion that you can double the amount of transistors in the same amount of area every 18 months. And we've gotten to a point where things have gotten so small, so fast, so energy efficient that we can start pushing out computation into a number of different places. And it opens up different opportunities, like Dayveon's opportunity there. I mean, in the past, you wouldn't have the battery power to, track all these things. You just couldn't do it. And even now, batteries challenge for higher computation. But the fact that we are at that point, and now we're starting to see flexible substrates, flexible sensors, things like that, we're enabling more and more comfortable wearables that track things sort of without us having to look at it, without looking like we're tracking things.
I think, that's exactly on point, which is what I've heard is that in the ideal wearable, it's seamless to your daily life, it's integrated into your life, and, you should not be able to see it. So my question then is, when you have wearables, whether it's glasses or a wristwatch or whatnot, I think you have to sort of pick and choose the kind of functionalities you want within that device. It can't do too many things because it's small. How do you guys pick and choose what you're putting, which I'm assuming is the difficult part, and what are you prioritizing? Is it function? Is it style? Is it comfort?
I think it depends on the customer. It really does. And you could actually put a ton of stuff on a watch. I mean, Samsung Gear does anything a phone does and more if you can figure out how to do it. User interaction is really important to us right now. And on small things that maybe have a small screen or no screen or limited screen, it makes traditional interactions difficult. And this is why, there's this transition where people are effectively putting phones on people's wrists. And it doesn't work well because the interaction modalities are different. But soon, with the increase in computation that we're seeing, you're going to see more conversational UI, so you'll be able to talk to your things better, more gestural UI, so that you won't have to actually, fiddle with a tiny screen with your fingers trying to do a pinch and zoom. So I think, and you're asking about style and function, depends on your customer, right? If you're making something for, for Porsche, it's going to be dramatically different than if you're making something with Tory Burch. It's getting to the point now where the merger of technology and fashion, technology and fitness, technology and wellness really dictates that there are somewhat unique solutions being developed in each space with unique functionalities and unique interactions.
So for us, there were a few things that were non-starters for us and things that we had to base into our requirements, which were really, really critical. When you're playing basketball specifically and you're shooting a jump shot and this device goes on your shooting hand, it's really important for it to be invisible. It's got to be light. It's the reason why, we couldn't make the board. Right now, our device weighs less than 0.4 ounces because it was really important for when you're shooting to, it's got to be something that you could wear in a game and you could almost forget that you had it on. So you're in your workout and you walk off and you still have it on. So, those are the specific requirements. So I agree with Todd. I think everybody in their own right are going to have their own requirements which drive some of the decisions that they made. We made the decision not to go with Wi-Fi because, the Wi-Fi chip was so huge that it would potentially hurt the battery power, and we didn't want people to have to say, hey, time out, coach, I need to charge my wearable. So those are the things that we needed to take into consideration as we built out our requirements.
I would say we're not making anything, but we are providing a solution to this question, which is just ask the crowd what they want. We see more and more people who use us as a platform, not only to raise funds, but as a way to do intense, focused testing on their market. And say, we have these 5 features, we'll make one. Or we're promising this one feature, we can do these 4. If we raise X dollars, you can vote on one of them. Every time we raise another X dollars, you can vote on the other, or we'll limit the feature set. But you can really go and really tightly tailor a specific product to a niche audience. If the niche audience is invested enough and wants to do that, great, you can get a really, really specific product made and produced.
I actually had a follow-up question for you because, so much of wearables is about being connected to one company's ecosystem. So we're looking at, yesterday at Google I/O, they're coming out with Android, smartwatches, and everything is supposed to be connected. Your Android smartwatch to your Android smartphone to the Android platform in your car. So, but on Indiegogo, you guys have a lot of, small entrepreneurs and startups that are trying to get into the space. I'm assuming that's the case for a lot of people in the audience here. How difficult is it to break in, especially when I think a lot of people increasingly are becoming wedded to just one brand? They only want to be in the Apple ecosystem or the Samsung ecosystem.
Most people we see are trying to be in multiple ecosystems. And I think there's also a lot of third-party providers who are trying to do the interoperability solution. I don't think one has emerged yet that's solved that problem for everyone. I expect that it will at some point because the need is growing. And as wearables become more and more adopted, there's just going to be more of an opportunity for someone to do that. But right now, it's not difficult. I think especially if you raise money and you very visibly raise a lot of money, you tend to be approached by a lot of people who want you to be part of their ecosystem because you have customers. And regardless of what platform you are, you don't want to say, hey, you can't be on our platform if you're on the other person's, if you just are coming with a giant bucket of customers before you even have a device in their hands.
And I like to kind of address that as well. Hardware is a very capital intensive, R&D intensive effort. So at Epson, we've really approached the market through an open platform approach where for our hardware devices, we're going to have open SDKs and APIs because we don't pretend that we're the only ones with the right solution for the consumer or for the enterprise. Instead, we want to open it up and have developers like yourselves kind of use our hardware as the data collection tool, the biometric data collection tool, or the smart glasses AR tool for the solution you have. And towards that end, we've actually already had a few success stories with the Moverio smart glasses, where a couple of the startups that we've worked with have gotten some really good funding to move their use cases forward and their applications forward based on the Moverio glasses technology.
I think Anna's right in the sense of thinking about trying to do open platforms and things like that. But really what we're seeing here, and what you pointed out when you talked about what Google I/O is doing with like Android Wear, and you could argue that Samsung's going with their special like Tizen skin on Android. It's the intersection of business models and data models. And we're going to see more of this until something gets hammered out, because I think we see that Google, their business model is to own your eye data. They want to know what you're looking at for ad revenue, and arguably where you are as well for ad revenue. Samsung, in order to sort of capture a little bit of that, they put their own screen, their own skin on things to try to add their own flavor to it and different functionalities from mainstream Android. But each of these has a different notion of what happens to the data. And I think increasingly we're going to have a really solid business discussion and privacy and personal discussion about who owns my body data. Who owns all this data that I'm collecting? Right now it's in a whole bunch of silos, right? Nike Fuel owns part of me. Maybe Jawbone owns part of me. Garmin owns part of me. At some stage, I'm going to need to be that arbiter that decides who owns me. And we haven't hit that yet, but I think that's what's starting to play out.
The only thing I would add is that we've kind of seen this story play out before, right? So if we take a step back and look at, if you're a runner, a cyclist, those types of, either the running watches or, your heart rate monitors, GPS. So for instance, there's been infrastructures out there that support that cross-platform integration. So if you think about Ant, it was built by Garmin. A lot of people, if you think about, there's companies, for instance, MapMyFitness. Their whole infrastructure is built on, I don't care what watch you have, I don't care what components you have, we can integrate your data into one cross-platform. It's the reason we saw Nike make this transition from, I'm going to transition to try and make fuel that unit of measurement that's ubiquitous. It's the reason we're seeing it. So I think we've seen this story play out, and it's inevitable. It's just going to be a matter of time before, these platforms have to have the open APIs or the keys to allow people to play nicely together.
Todd, you mentioned this idea of companies owning parts of you, and I think that's probably one of the biggest concerns that people have with wearables when they're always on your body, and like I said before, when they always know what you're up to. Is that something that consumers should legitimately be worried about? And how, on the business end, do you persuade them that you're not up to no good when you collect all that data?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, none of us would stop using Google, I don't think. I think we all love Google. It's great. It's the best search engine. We love using it. And we're a bit big, but there are some great search engines out there that are capturing our data. I think we take that for granted and we go, okay, you're improving my experience. Amazon starts proposing things I might want to buy, but I think we're going to get to a point where we have to seriously consider if there is going to be an emergent personal data economy. how might my data be used, for instance, to improve physical therapy around the world, or to, there are so many things that might be used if we had more control, more interchangeability, more comparability of our data. We don't really have that yet. I mean, a lot of doctors don't like you to bring your stuff in from your wearable because they don't trust it, for one reason. Another reason is it doesn't fit in with their existing ecosystem of data, which is, EMRs, that's another story, the electronic medical records, how those data are handled. But, I mean, one thing that we've been trying to do is really understand the nuance of the academic community and where they're going with data. And it's really an interesting thing that you can look toward a future vision where maybe you would have a data broker, a personal data broker, like you have a stockbroker. Hey, Nike saw this video of you doing something really cool. They're going to pay you X cents per, impression if you let them use it. If I have a data broker, personal data broker, I might let them handle that. It's possible. I mean, there's a website that's now growing around this called WeTheData.org, and is looking at, how do we make this open? How do we give people the control over their data?
Oh, I was going to say, in the area of fitness trackers, read your privacy policy very carefully, because I have been reading a lot of privacy policies, and they really vary quite a bit from one company to another. And secondly, even the government, in terms of the Affordable Care Act, is incentivizing corporate wellness, where if people actually sign up to a corporate wellness program and freely submit their data to corporate wellness programs, they actually get kind of a rebate on their health insurance. So I think there is this, it is unclear who owns the data, and there's actually incentives already in place from the Affordable Care Act for corporate wellness to incentivize people to use activity trackers.
You mentioned with your activity trackers that you're obsessed with your sleep data and I'm assuming stuff like steps counted, everything. Have you guys seen evidence that people are actually becoming more healthy, that they're doing something with this data, or is it just at the end of the day they're like, all right, I walked 5,000 steps, that sucked, and the next day it's like 5,000 steps again?
Well, I can tell you, I think we talked about it a little bit earlier, kind of the trend. The trend data is actually more interesting. Is as you look at your data over time, you start to see a trend in your sleep. And the reason why I get excited is I wanted to see not just was I restless, but what was my heart rate doing in the middle of my sleep? I'm sometimes really shocked to see spikes in my heart rate. Was I having a nightmare, that I don't remember? But what was interesting for some of the internal beta testers is they saw their trend, the regular sleep pattern. And then all of a sudden one night, a weekend night, they had a few beers and a few glasses of wine. And then they noticed that night their heart rate was much higher than their normal sleep. And so they realized, as one person said, it was almost like their body was fighting off the alcohol. So you start to see kind of anomalies, and then you can trace it back to what was different, and do I want to do anything about it?
I think one thing that's really interesting about these tracking wearables is that if you read all the research that's out there right now, people are wearing them, they're excited about it, and then after maybe 3 to 6 months, they're less excited about it, and it ends up in that drawer where your old cell phone lives. And that's been going on and going on. I think there's a crucial element missing that can help wearables and tracking things get over the hump, and that's the so what. I walked 5,000 feet today, or 5,000 steps today. So what? I ate 3 Big Macs. If it's not going to give me that analytical so what, I think people are realizing the tracking is fun, it's interesting, but it's not giving that so what. And so there's an emerging class of data analytics engines that I think are going to really push things over the edge. And then you can start to see things like this emerging in the quantified self movement. If you go to their conferences, you start to see people doing visualizations of really complex things that's not just walking, but walking and sleeping and eating and doing all these other things, like meticulous tracking. And so they're starting to show value in this, but you need that analytical side to tell you the so what.
And I have to say that I think we're on our way there, but we're not there yet. when I look at some of these trackers, I totally agree with you, Todd. I think it ends up being a fad for a period of time where you're really watching what's going on for the first few months, and then it kind of dies off. I went through the same process, right, and realized that, wow, I didn't sleep that well, saying I slept through the night. So I started to realize that, wow, this stuff is consistently inconsistent. So it's not as accurate as we'd like to think. And I do not know you didn't sleep well. What? Yes, but I think it's one of those things that as we evolve and as wearables evolve, we have to get to the point where there's a certain level of accuracy that's really, really critical. And I agree that the so what is so important, right? So I did X, Y, and Z. What does that translate to? And I think it's going to be really important for us to be able to integrate the data with other elements that you're not going to get from the fitness trackers. That's why it's so important for the integration to occur, whether it's a centralized website, whether it's, whatever it is, it's going to be really important to be able to understand the implications of those steps or the lack thereof, and be able to really look at it end to end. Right now, we're just getting pieces, which, like anything else, if you only get part of the story, it's really hard to put it together.
I would just echo that. What I'm really excited about is when we get the open APIs and we get third-party services that can be built on top of this, I think it becomes really interesting. Like, I can imagine a not that distant future where my activity tracker communicates to some service. In the grocery store and it says, you're in the ice cream aisle, you haven't run this week, you can't do this. And but that's real time. That's getting me where I actually, a difference needs to be made. And I think that will open up when we let people build services on top of the data that this hardware is making.
Yeah, and I was going to say, in my case, just using the heart rate, this actually made me think about, okay, it's not just 10,000 steps, but it's almost the intensity of those 10,000 steps. Was my heart rate in the fat burn zone? Or was I just kind of casually walking, in the below exercise zone where I'm not as effective with my workout? And on top of that, I start to realize, wow, I just burn off a lot of calories just by living and breathing. But it's really hard to burn off calories from working out. So it made me really, I think, for folks who have certain fitness or weight loss goals, hopefully adding the heart rate component and the zone training makes it a lot more effective and efficient. So I think a lot of tools and software will come about making people interpret their data or use their data a lot more effectively.
Let's talk a bit about the products coming down the pipeline. I think right now we're still in the early stages of wearables, and I think if you ask most people what is a wearable, they're thinking of either a fitness tracker, a smartwatch, or Google Glass. What are some other use cases that you guys are either working on or that you're thinking of for down the line?
I guess I'll start. I'm really thinking about material science. That's sort of my new best friend. Learning a lot about how wearables that can become integrated into the things we do, they really require things like conductive yarns, conductive fabrics, stretchable sensors, waterproof. All of these things have to come together to make things seamlessly fit into our lives. I think the wrist and the glasses are phone adaptations. I think it's a great first step. But I think the next step is going to be closer integration to what we do every day. And I think about it, I was walking here today and I was looking at my map on my phone to make sure I can figure out where this place is. Well, there's a company, an Australian company called Wearable Experiments that's actually adapted gentle vibrations in your shoulder blades in a blazer that's just like mine that will take the feedback from your map and give you a little tap on the shoulder when it's time to turn. I could walk around the new city not looking like a tourist. That's pretty cool. It's simple use case, but kind of interesting. I don't know if that alone could drive a product, but it shows a spark, right? It shows I don't have to look like I'm trying to show you I'm wearable savvy or I'm very tech savvy, but still get the advantage.
So there's a couple of things I'm excited about. I'll talk about in the medical field. I'm really excited to see where wearables would go. I think about if we think of one disease think about diabetes right now, people are always checking, to see they're pricking their fingers. Wouldn't it be nice if your pump was, a smart pump? I mean, we know it's coming, but we're not there yet. People are still using, the manual intervention, right? Oh, I know I had something bad to eat. I'm going to give myself a pulse. So I think in the medical field, we're going to see a lot of awesome things coming where, it's going to be able to be almost, just in time, like inventory management, where you can actually look in real time, be able to do analysis and make decisions, which could potentially protect people from going down a path where, everybody gets sick, get hurt, etc. So that's the first thing, I'm excited about. The second thing, of course, is, in all relevant sports, we see the opportunity. So, for instance, there's a solution right now in the market brought to the market by Stats LLC called SportsView. And what it is actually doing location. But it's doing location, not necessarily proximity like iBeacons, that type of stuff. It's using cameras. Now there's some stuff that we're working on that we're really excited about where we can identify within 10 centimeters where somebody is on the court. That's really exciting for us because it's in a wearable, it's using ultra-wideband, it's not subjected to all the noise in the market, but we can utilize that as a wearable within our existing solution to be able to almost digitize a game, similarly like we would do with cameras. So those are some of the things that I'm excited about for the future of wearables.
I think there's a couple things we're excited about. I think one we don't know yet. I think we tend to see things just pop up that amaze us on a regular basis. I think the service is one thing that is really interesting, and just additional things that are complex, and maybe the wearable hardware itself isn't the core of why that wearable is exciting. It's something really complex built on top of that incorporates into my life. And I would say also very excited about seeing wearables just integrate more into fashion. I think we're seeing a lot of that in the past year, and I think that will happen more as things just become closer and closer to something that I think somebody who's hates the tech look can wear, feel comfortable, and get the benefits of as well.
Can you give us an example, you said, of a few of the things that you saw that were exciting?
Yeah, sure. I think there's one actually out of LA that we saw called the Rufus Cuff, which it's like I think it is somewhat along the phone on the wrist type, but kind of really pushing that look. I think that's really, it's interesting for us just because I think it's pushing more towards the embrace of that and using that actually as a full fashion statement and saying, this is the look we're going for, rather than trying to incorporate that into like something that currently exists.
Something I saw in the last, I want to say, 30 days or so was Wearables, which is, I don't know if I would say it's exciting, it's a little scary, but there's some excitement that the technology is going in there where people are taking, I forgot the name of it, but I think it was on Indiegogo.
We've had an RFID chip for that goes into your, we have one on your thumb, is there one on the wrist right now?
Where you actually go into the wrist, and it's very small, and they put it into the wrist, and you can use it, communicate to open doors, to do, tons of stuff. So very, very, again, I reserve the right to change, and excited to, it's a little bit scary, but it's definitely cutting edge, and it'd be interesting to see where that goes.
See, that groups me out because just a little over a year ago, I wrote a story about wearables currently, and then the story ended with someone saying, far down the line, we might have something like embedded wearables in your skin. And I remember we had this literally it was like maybe like 15 months ago, and we were both like, wow, that sounds so crazy and futuristic. And you're telling me this is already something that I can see on Indiegogo.
I know we had one, I think this was 7 or 8 months ago. There maybe in the middle of a reboot. But yeah, the one I saw was a small RFID chip that you could implant. I think I saw it in their thumb, but I think you can put it anywhere and then use it, program it yourself.
Okay, am I the only one who's like freaked out by this? Okay, this is like a no for me.
Our pets for years.
Doing it into our what?
Our pets get chips.
Yeah, into our pets.
Yeah, and it's not a far thing from that to saying I want my kid to be able to be scannable.
I do remember the first time I did it to my cat. I microchipped her, and they picked her up and needed to make sure it worked. So it was like they scanned her just like you would like a carton of milk at the grocery store.
And there's like analogous situations. Like I was doing research in Korea, and people were putting like dongles on their kids' backpack, and that dongle alerted the parent when the kid walked through the doors of the school. So So they knew the kid was where, or at least the backpack was where it was supposed to be. And I suspect they would feel even better if they knew the kid was attached to the backpack.
Oh my God.
Right now there's a wearable panel that's talking about putting embeddables in your owners.
Okay. Do you guys find, I mean, as people on the manufacturing end of wearables, does that idea, I know you said it was kind of exciting, do you feel like that's okay, or are you a little hesitant? Where do you draw the line?
I think we shy away a little bit because you need to think about FDA things, and that's a different kind of approval process, and that's what's keeping a lot of people away from really improving medical wearables, really, because there's this intimidation about, oh my gosh, what's it going to take? How many years will it take to bring it to market? And can I sustain it in my business and carry the burden of going through FDA approval? So, I think it's a little creepy, but who knows, 10 years from now, we might not think so. I mean, think about 10 years back from, 10 years prior to now, 15 years, nobody had a cell phone on them. I mean, when you started to see people with cell phones or smartphones, you started to say, who does he think he is? Who's he calling? Why does he have to call? Now I can't imagine not having my smartphone attached to me.
Sure.
The funding, as you said, is a big deal to bring something like that to fruition. So I think that, if this is to become a reality, it's going to have to be, the large pharmaceutical companies and who are already dumping, hundreds of millions of dollars into the R&D and can actually support that. I would think that it's or well-funded, extremely well-funded startups that have strategic investors. For us, it's not something we think about at all. But, I can foresee it happening in the future, but it's going to have to be, as you said, someone who has the ability to just, go through the process of the FDA process and the longevity necessary to be successful.
If you could embed your ShotTracker into your skin so you never had to wear it on, you said right now you wear it on like an armband, right? So if you could put it in you so that for the rest of your life you could just track every shot, is that something that appeals to you?
Maybe like 14 years ago.
Okay.
I can barely get over a credit card now. So, I'm not a bit of
All right.
I like to see you charge yourself every night.
Well, that's an interesting thing too, though. Using the body's electric to do the sensors is pretty exciting. I mean, I saw a demo out of Japan. I think it was the phone company KDB. They had these headphones that they made with little copper butt on. They looked like a normal headphone. The guy puts them in, and it turns out with that little copper piece on it, he's able to sense the electro-ocular electricity. So the electricity that's right on your temple, created by eye movement, the muscles that are moving your eye. So he was able to control an iPod, fast forward, rewind by looking left, looking right. And so it's exciting, it's interesting to think about what you might leverage off electrical impulses and signals like the body's already giving off. I mean, news is a way of doing it with your EEG, but there are so many other areas where our body is putting off electrical energy that might deliver some interesting interactions.
Let's talk a little bit about Google Glass, because I feel like this is the hot topic always in wearables.
Still the hot topic?
Is what?
Is it still the hot topic?
I think from where I stand, at least at the LA Times, it is. But my question, actually, I was at Google headquarters last week, and when I was talking to them, they on their own mentioned this idea of the bad publicity that they continue to get from people who feel like, the glass holes are filming them, that kind of thing. I know you guys don't use the same kind of, or you aren't manufacturing really Google Glass, but how do you, I guess, encourage a good dialogue with people who use wearables to do so in a respectful way? When I was at Google, they even said that when they give glass to new users, they're actually cautioning them and teaching them about how to use it in a way that doesn't come off as completely obnoxious.
Well, I think if you look at glass as an example, I think it was a fairly brilliant onboarding for user experience. So first they made people pay that wanted it. They really wanted it. They were willing to pay $1,500 for a cell phone effectively. And then they made them come to them so they could tell them, here's exactly how it works. Here's what you tell people when they say this. How many of you have met somebody wearing glass? It looks like maybe half of you. And when you met that person wearing glass, and you came up to them and said, "Is that Google Glass?" And they said, "Why, yes, it is." And you said, "Are you recording me?" And they said, "No, that's silly. You'd see this light go on if I was recording you. Would you like to try them?" You know, they really trained them really well in how to handle different objections. And yet, they're still, I mean, it has no more functionality than your smartphone. But the fact that it can be doing things like, if I make a gesture with my smartphone, you know what I'm doing. If I'm doing this, you can pretty much be guaranteed I'm taking a picture. You know, whereas if I'm wearing glasses, it might be a little harder. And so I think the fact that it makes it that you could be doing things surreptitiously, even if you're not, kind of upsets people. But I saw a really funny skit on Jon Stewart, where he was showing these people get really upset because people think that they're recording them when they're not looking, and they are. You know, it was like, oh, oops. But it is a problem, but I don't know if it'll ever be solved.
So as a manufacturer of glass, these are the Epson Wearable glasses. We've consciously focused more on enterprise industrial applications, because if you think about, you know, in the industrial space, vertical applications, there's true value and needs that these glasses are addressing. And if you think about, you know, the adoption of computer, it started off first in the workplace, and over time it migrated into the home. So we think that the same phenomenon will happen with glasses, is that it's going to first prove its value and benefit as a wearable display in the workplace, and gradually over time, as the industrial design gets more consumer friendly and the price point gets more consumer friendly, that we'll see more and more of the use cases occur in the consumer space, and then that transitioning happening in probably a 3 to 5 year span.
I couldn't agree more. I think the industrial space is the magic space for things like head-worn wearables, because not only is it acceptable because you kind of own and protect that environment, but also the things in that environment are known, right? You have a common visual object vocabulary, you have a common language around the work environment, so it can do really magical things that you can't really do out in the wild. So I think you're right, it's going to prove out in the enterprise space, which is kind of funny because we went through this whole consumerization thing, yet if we look at these, it's almost turning it back around and going, okay, now we're going to go back to enterprise and then go back to consumers, almost like things were with computers and laptops.
Last question, and then I think we'll open it up for questions. I'm wondering, you know, we talk about early adopters. What are you guys doing to persuade the average consumer to try out wearables? The people who don't know too much about it, are kind of curious, still kind of on the sidelines. How do you get them on board?
So I can talk about from a basketball perspective. You know, one of the things that works in our favor is that anybody who plays basketball, they want to be a good shooter. So, you know, that's something that definitely works in our favor. And there's a couple of things that we're doing. So, for instance, when we went out into the market, we had probably, you know, 50 to 75 coaches reach out to us and said, wow, we love this from the accountability perspective. So what we're doing is we're working with the influencers. So as part of this, not only do we have a consumer app, but we also have the coaches app, where the coach can aggregate the data from every one of his players and aggregate it in a consolidated manner. So for us, we're empowering the coach. And from the coach's perspective, he's saying, you want to play on my team? You know, when I tell you to do 1,000 jump shots, there's a certain level of accountability. So that works in our favors to help drive a lot of people who are, you know, not necessarily early adopters into wearable, but at the end of the day, they want to do better. And if you think about it, you know, there's a stat, you know, of course, when you start up with a lot of market validation, you know, right now our target audience is the 7 to 17, and there's about 10 million kids playing competitive basketball, and they spend anywhere from $6,000 to $12,000 a year just to be able to play basketball, get a scholarship. I mean, these kids are buying $200 shoes. You know, I was up in Portland with some meetings, and You know, they were talking about the Hyperdunk, and it was $380, and it was some shoes that had sensors in them. You know, they're spending that money. So I think, you know, anything that you can provide these kids the opportunity to get to the next level, it helps. You know, and it's a great opportunity for us to introduce wearables to them.
How much is the ShotTracker, by the way?
So we have 2 versions of the ShotTracker right now, and this was really important for us. There's a $99 version, which actually tracks shot attempts, makes and misses, and it tracks your location via structured workouts. And then we have a $199 version that actually does automatic location sensing. So literally, you can throw the ball, shoot wherever you want, and it'll automatically plat that shot chart for you, no matter where you are on the court.
I think Dayveon is a perfect example of an audience that has a perceived value. You know, in this regard, either the players want to improve their game, the coach wants to be able to make sure his coaching is most effective, that they're doing what he's asked them to do. So you found users who actually value what you're making. And I think rather than taking something out and saying, hey, do you like this? You understand consumers and markets much better, and you deliver something that they value. You know, and I think it has to come from something that people value. Otherwise, we'll keep running into these. It goes out, people try it, they're doing something new, then they stop doing it because it's not what they truly value. And I think one thing we kind of missed a little bit of tonight was this notion of a lot of these wearables are coming from the makerspace, and they're coming from, you know, small companies, right? They're coming through Indiegogo, they're coming through Kickstarter, and these are people who are, you know, essentially tinkering. They're prototyping. They're doing what we would do at a big company. We would call it prototyping, but they don't have the backing or the skill set to take it sort of from tinker to trade. And that's going to be a big challenge for these smaller companies to stay alive long enough to make that transition. I mean, recently we saw Misfit sign a deal with Pebble, right? And I don't know if that's a sign of things to come, you know, in the advance of Apple releasing a product, of all the little guys saying, oh, can we get together to make sure we got something?
I mean, I think I can speak to, we do have a lot of people coming from the maker movement. I think a few things. One, there is a space where you can just say, hey, do you guys want this? And get an answer, and we provide that service. Maybe you are tinkering, and maybe you don't know if what you have made does have a product market fit or not. There's a really easy way to find that out. It's on Indiegogo right now, and you can go, and if you make a lot of money, it's a pretty good indication the market's interested. I would also say, just echo your points. I think what we really see is, you know, I've looked at probably many thousands of crowdfunding videos now, see many thousands of campaigns. And I think one thing I see in campaigns, and this is any space, but I think it really applies to wearables, is showing the consumer really the kind of aspirational vision of their life with your product. I think I'll go to the Atlas fitness tracker, which is just on the health because it's something where people so clearly want to improve. Which it goes in a wrist and it tracks specific exercises. So push-ups, pull-up, and whatever you do, it kind of recognizes it and tracks it. And they show in their video and their marketing, it's all, you have this, here's a guy doing, this is your life if you were him. Obviously he's extremely fit, but here's your life if you were him. You can track this. This is just a use case. This is your day. And it's really clear. I don't have to care about tech. I don't have to necessarily know anything about that space. I just have to want that good or service. And so I think people who make that really clear do very well. Now, we definitely have a lot of people who come in and don't have that figured out and spend the time where they're publicly trying to raise funds figuring that out. And by the end of it, they really understand what that is. Where maybe at the beginning they had a giant market. At the end, they've heard from, out of our 1,000 people who gave us money, 600 of them were for this niche purpose that we thought was 10% of our market.
Sure. All right, thanks, you guys. Let's open it up for questions. I'm just going to give you my mic. All right.
So if you guys want to just go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll come by and give you the mic and ask you questions. So, any questions? Pardon me, Anthony.
I have a question. What do you suggest for people who are developing apps? Because it seems like there's like a fragmented marketplace in terms of where people can distribute their apps. Like, for example, if you make an app, you do iOS and Android, but now with so many different platforms, what do you guys suggest for people who want to develop something for wearables?
Well, I think in the short term, certainly iOS and Android make sense. Longer term, probably open source things like Yocto Linux, there's some Python things down that road are going to become more and more important.
I think the key thing I would say is that it's really important to have the right infrastructure. So, a lot of people build native apps and, they hit APIs, RESTful solutions in the back end. I think it's really important to, versus a platform, but if you build a RESTful type of back end infrastructure that allows you to, at that point in time, you're playing on any app when the opportunities arise. So you may start off with, native iOS hitting the RESTful back end, Android hitting the RESTful backend, but as things pop up, the great thing about building a distributed architecture like that is, you have to think that, 50 to 70%, depending on your app, is already complete. So you're just tweaking that 30% as it comes up, as the opportunity comes up. So I think that's the critical thing if you want to position yourself to be able to quickly be able to transition into other infrastructures, other OSs, etc.
I kind of take it from a different approach. Is your use case compelling? If your use case is compelling, it's going to appeal to both iOS and Android users. So I think first understand, is there a market need and interest for the app that you're developing?
Okay, great. Right here. If I can reach over you guys, sorry.
Are you guys seeing a trend at all towards users being able to customize these apps, these products? In other words, like this week I only want to monitor my REM sleep, or I only want to monitor my jump shot, not my my free throws, something like that.
I think that's an interesting point. I think that's another thing we haven't talked a whole lot about. I think increasingly we're having the capability for lack of a better word, bespoke usages. So like you're saying, it's almost like the craftsman, the center of user-centered design is I know my client so well, or I know my customer so well, that I'm going to customize the usage to that person. And we're getting there that you could start doing that. And I think, that's in the near horizon, we're going to start seeing things that are customizable to individuals.
From our perspective, what we've done is we've built out what we call our drill marketplace that allows you to just look at different workouts that would have, at one point there may be a free throw workout, there may be a jump shot workout. So, that's how we've given people the opportunity to really customize what they want to do on that specific day. And I think that, within our infrastructure, we're trying to continuously learn what people are not good at, and potentially, build out a recommendation engine that can say, hey, one of the things that we ask you when you sign up is what position you play, what's your height, what's your weight. Now that we have that information and we're seeing what you're doing from the customized workout, we have the opportunity to recommend to you, hey, we notice you're a small forward, you're going to be hitting shots from here in the game, we notice you're not doing this workout, how about this? So we give you the opportunity to customize, but we're also going to use the intelligence that we garner from your participation to be able to suggest stuff.
Okay, great. We've got another one right here.
Hi, this is a question for Dayveon. Great concept, by the way. Just a question on how do you think about ShotTracker as a platform that perhaps scales across multiple sports? Going back to the question that was asked about fragmentation, can you think about the same platform for baseball or for tennis or for golf?
Yeah, so ShotTracker is the first product of DD Sports, which stands for Data-Driven Sports. And, we have 4 components, right? We've got wrist, net, our cloud services, and then our location. So when we think about the platform, we think about 4 components. We see the opportunity to take a wrist sensor to integrate. So for instance, we've been, working with a couple of the big shoe and apparel companies who've had a lot of interest in what we're doing. And their thought process was, okay, we need to make sure you have hands in there because we want to integrate this with our heart rate monitors. So not only do I want to see your performance on how you're shooting, but I want to be able to correlate that with your heart rate as part of it. So for us, we are thinking about it as a platform. Now, the thing that we struggle with is the fact that there's a really good opportunity for us to go really deep in basketball. So when do you make that transition and extrapolate out to, the other sports? And is it too late? So if you think about, there's a company by the name of Zep that does, the golf stuff. They also do they do baseball. You know, for us, it's you know, we filed a few patents on, you know, being able to identify that, create a signature for each individual, and we believe that that is transferable across multiple markets. But now our main focus is basketball, but we are thinking about it from a platform, and those are the 4 components of the platform. Now, you know, if we get the opportunity to transition into other sports or by ourselves, or do we get that opportunity with somebody who believes that we have some value here and we partner up with them and it's a little bit easier for us to scale into those other markets, you know, time will tell. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Okay, great. Thank you for the question.
We're just going to take one more question and then we can make an announcement, so please go ahead.
All right, this question is for Todd, but others can answer too. When we usually think about wearables, it's about individual use. A lot of perception is that I am wearing it alone. But what are your thoughts where wearable becomes shareable, where a lot of people are actually sharing the same wearable device?
Yeah. So you're saying, what else might you do with the data that might be more social? Sorry, like right now.
Yes. Or if the device was actually shared by a lot of people.
If the device itself was shared, I mean, I think there's a couple of different things going on there, right? I mean, in some parts of the world, less so now, we were seeing sharing of personal devices, like sharing of phones and things like that. When I think about sharing data from wearable devices, I think there's one example that comes to mind right away that was sharing in an interesting way. I mean, the coaching way is one thing that's social, right? He knows where all of his players are at any given time. I saw another thing where in Australia they designed this shirt that looks like an Australian rules football shirt, and it's got actuators and sensors in it connected to the players on the field that actually when you wear your fan jersey, you feel your favorite player's heart racing when he's running. You feel the impact when he gets knocked on his butt, and you're actually sitting there watching him feeling it all. And that's, to me, a really unique, interesting way of taking like heart rate data, impact data, accelerometer data, and making a different sort of empathy, right? Driving a different sort of empathy with people who aren't the user. Well, they become a user as a spectator. But I'm not sure that's exactly what you're asking. Okay.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up now. Can we give a round of applause to our panel, please? Thank you, guys.